Hello, this week we're going to be going through particles. So let me transition over here really quick and we'll start taking a look at examples. So, what are particles? Particles are anything that you're adding on to a character as some kind of an effect. So, particles can include things, I'm just going to pull up Zelda here just as a quick example, like those little poofs of dust as Link is running. Those are particles. Things like bombs exploding, when a character swings their sword and like an air wave goes out to hit an enemy, that's a particle. If the character runs, get down here to where it's hopefully going to have a few more like bombs. As they go through bushes and those break into pieces. We're going to have a bomb here in just a second. So they're running through the grass. Each time the grass is cut, and it has this poof of, grass clippings that goes up. And same thing with the bushes, the bush clippings that go up. Those are particles. So any kind of an additional effect is a particle. So let me pull this up really fast. Transition here. All right, so here's some examples of particles as well. So things like this flame right here that dances, that's a particle. And that's something that's more of an environmental thing. So things like torches, fires, campfires, all those are particles. Those are animated little flames. But things that are used also when a character interacts with other things are particles. So in this game, when the character punches, there are these little waves that go out, like these air waves that go out that then extend from the character's punch. So these are a particle as well. When a character makes contact or takes damage based on the type of damage, there are different particles. So when the character gets hit by fire, there's a fire particle. When they get hit by needles, there's the needle spines hitting them. When there's a small amount of damage, there's that kind of a splash. When there's this large damage, bigger splash. This is more of like an airwave particle. This is water splashing and doing damage. So those are all examples of particles. And I keep looking down here. I need to look up the camera once in a while. But these are different types of particles. So I'm going to go back into the game and make sure I get rid of those things. Let me start this gameplay over again. So if you want to see how these kind of get put together, as this character hits the ground and sends stones my way, I'm going to block that. I've got a little UI particle right there. But even as the dinosaur tail hits, it creates a particle. It's going to keep sending these against me. If I punch this, it goes back. You can see there's that little hit particle. I'm actually going to start this over again. This is the infinite level, so they're kind of random. But watch for the extension from the character, which, let me pause it. If I select this character and I go to their animation, and I do something like a lower attack, right here, all it is the character kicking. So that's the lower attack. Now if I unpause and come back to the game, if I don't have them locked in an animation. There we go. As I break it. But watch what happens as I do this kick right now. This is perfect for it. Okay, if I do that lower attack, in addition to the character's animation, there's this extra animation that's added on that's a particle. If I do this upper attack, same thing with the block. Both the defense block and that particle going out. Because here's the block, but watch what happens when I hit. Let me do one more. There we go. Perfect. The hanging cauldron. This will show a couple. If I hit this and then block, you can see there's these additional particles. So these are all examples of particles. Now, with particles, they're all based on fluid type effects, whether it's water, air, fire, smoke. These are all fluid type effects. So in current particle systems, we get really advanced fluid effects to create all of them. For these types of retro games, we're still trying to do the same thing. Going back to this over here, let me transition over to the internet. Even if we're watching something like Zelda, they have some particles that have different effects, but it's still all based on the same type of stuff. Okay, I'm going to use a bomb so you can watch. Setting a bomb there and watch the explosion. There's a nice effect. So they have the explosion itself and then the after crumble, and there's all these layers of particles. Now, the way we learn how to create these is not just by watching old games, although there are some that are fantastic for it, that go in, have very stylized particle effects that can bring things to life, some that are very realistic as well, that really try and explore how something moves. But the way we learn is by looking at actual particles, looking at flames and smoke and water. So something like this for trying to get a flame that blasts up, watching the movement. This is animation, just like any other kind of animation, but applying it to this approach. So when you're dealing with these kinds of effects, you want to research first off, and then start dissecting it. So in the same way we can dissect an animation, which we did quite a few videos ago with what's the walk cycle, where do they step, how do they move? You're researching movement. So watch how this flows up, and if this is going too fast, fun thing about having YouTube is I can go to my settings, change my playback speed, and I can slow it down even further and hit play, and I can watch this unfold as this part of the flame moves up and in almost like a shaft. Everything above it gets pushed out of the way and it folds and billows. And so you can see how this flame movement is happening as it goes up. I can go and select a candle. And this is not really moving a lot. I can see a little vibration here. This is kind of just locked in place. It's not a lot of air movement. There's a little bit. But there's some candle information that I can see. So at least I can identify the shape, how it's not directly on the wick right there, but it's actually kind of this shape above. Let's do another one here. Getting some fluidic movement of this candle. So let's take a look and start looking at how it moves. How it kind of shifts and molds and moves based on the air currents, and then even as it's just adjusting. Oh, I loved that right there, where it kind of bulged from the bottom and it rolled up and stretched out. And then looking at even the color differences, where it's more of a blue flame near the bottom, comes up to the yellow. Same thing would be true of a campfire. Where's the core of the fire? What is that? What are the next layers up as it extends to the end of the flames? And then what happens between the flames and where the smoke is? Is the smoke starting down below? Is it coming off of the tail end of the flames? Like, how is this happening? The only way you can figure this stuff out is by researching and looking at it. Even something like this. If I turn this sideways, this would be very similar to the flame that we saw earlier, except going sideways out, and then at the end it kind of hangs there and floats up. All right, so here's incense. Incense is always fun to watch because it pulls off in ribbons and streams and creates interesting shapes. So these are the kind of things that you can be looking at to try and figure out how these fluids move, how they affect, how they interact. And when you're talking about particles like that, as I brought up before with this, let me transition back. Go back to this scene and I'll drop in something like this. This is all based on fluid effects. It's air waves, sound waves, stuff like that. most attacks in games, the way we visually represent them is not just a punch, because a punch by itself is very boring and it doesn't convey feeling to a player. And so we have something else. So whether that is the player's punching so hard there's a wind wave that extends from it, or a sword swipe. It's never just the sword itself moving. There's usually something swiping with it, creating that swoosh motion. Looking at comic books and how they get those kind of effects as well. Somebody punching, it's not just the punch, it's this extra stuff that's kind of coming out of their arm, the fluid effects of the air being moved, noise disturbance, whatever that happens to be. Look at those kind of effects and then start coming up with ideas for how you can use fluid effects to create particles. And I keep using the terminology wrong, I apologize. When we talk about fluid effects and particles, that's more modern 3D. It's the same type of principle, but how do you recreate that in 2D? How do you create the same type of flames and, explosions and, attack swipes, things like that? That's the kind of stuff we're looking at when we're looking at creating particles. So I'm going to end this video here, and then I'll come back in the next video and show, once you're creating these particles, how they can be animated and implemented.